Greetings, gamers! My name is Beefy, and this is Beef Builds, the series where I share with you my fun, exciting, and crazy builds for D&D 5e. These builds use the core books as well as Volos, Xanathars, and Mordekainen's. No material from other books will be considered at this time. Think Oath of the Crown Paladin would be better for a future build? I'll tell you the same thing my dad told me when he taught me about homosexuality. I don't care if you do it, as long as it's not in my house. With that out of the way, today's build is a little something I like to call the Spell Cycle Druid. Here's the concept. While in Wild Shape, Circle of the Moon Druids gained the ability to burn a spell slot as a bonus action to heal 1d8 per spell level. Seems like a fair trade-off. Not like you were using those spell slots anyway, right? Well, what if I told you that you could have your cake and cast Flaming Sphere too? That's what we're gonna build today. A druid who can regain whatever spell slots they use to heal, giving them the best of both worlds. Sorry, had to do it. Let's start with the ability scores. Because your wild shape has you take on the physical stats and HP of whatever you turn into, there's no reason to put any points into your physical ability scores, so just dump them all into your int, wisdom, and charisma. You'll need at least a 13 in 2 of these for the rest of the build anyway, so you might as well max them out now since your wild shape lets you use your own mental ability score so you can have the best of both worlds. I'm sorry, I'll stop, I promise. Next we need to pick a race. Any race that buffs your mental stats would be ideal, particularly wisdom since it'll be your main casting stat for the first few levels. For this particular build, though, I'm going to assume your DM actually knows how to read and won't let you play the stupendously broken Aasimar, so I recommend you play a half-elf. The extra skill proficiencies are nice, and the ability to put all your bonuses into your mentals makes it ideal for a character who never has to use their own body for anything. Seriously, you could put this character in a wheelchair and it'd play exactly the same. Don't bother with physical stats. Now we get to the fun part, class levels and features. To start off, go 6 straight levels in Druid, taking Circle of the Moon at level 2. This will not only give you all that juicy self-healing we talked about earlier, but it'll also make your natural attacks magical, so you won't be SOL if you have a run-in with a construct who treats your teeth and claws like a gentle massage. Now you could stick with Druid straight to level 20, and you'd honestly be more optimized doing so, but that's what we in the creative character builds community like to call boring as shit. As such, we're going to switch things up and take 2 levels in Sorcerer. The reason we do this is because the Font of Magic feature lets us convert our sorcery points into spell slots as a bonus action. You can regain up to a 5th level spell slot this way, assuming you take more Sorcerer levels down the road, meaning you could theoretically heal for 5d8 and regain the spell slot in a single turn. The bloodline you choose doesn't really matter, but if your idea of a nice relaxing evening includes a game or 2 of Russian roulette, pick the wild bloodline. The ability to give yourself advantage once per long rest isn't terrible, and it's the only bloodline whose abilities would arguably work while you're wild shaped. If you want something a little more thematically sound, go for Storm. Letting yourself fly 10 feet would be nice in case you have to climb something and you want to avoid an awkward piggyback from the barbarian. Unless that's your thing. No kink shame. Alternatively, you could forego the Sorcerer class altogether and pick up Wizard instead for the Arcane Recovery feature at level 1. Once per day, you can regain a combination of spell slots whose levels are less than or equal to half your Wizard level rounded up. Yes, you heard right. Rounded up. That means you can get a first level spell slot back once per day at level 1 instead of level 2. You can also regain up to 6th level spell slots instead of 5th once you have the levels for it. The downside is that you can only do this once per day, meaning if you haven't used enough spell slots to make it worthwhile by the time your party decides to take a short rest, you can either take the L or make your party members question your sanity as you pretend to be Poseidon, creating and destroying water as you please. Abjuration is your arcane school of choice, since you gain a shield just for casting an appropriate spell, but War Mage makes a good safety school if you just want the extra tankiness. Ultimately, the choice is yours which class you want to dip into. And I do mean choice here, since each class's ability to restore your spell slots is tied to your class level. But hey, I'm not your dad. You want to Hannah Montana this shit too? Be my guest. Whatever you choose, you'll still have all the spell slots of a full spellcaster since 5e decided to make multiclassing not complete garbage for once. Now, you're about as likely to play a character all the way to level 20 as I am to date a bisexual goth girl who likes weed and anime, but just in case, you'll want to end up with a 12-8 split. This will bump up the CR of creatures you can wild shape into, as well as give you the power to turn into an elemental and go Fandral Staghelm on some bitches. If you just can't decide which class is best girl and try to thruple them all together, go 8, 6, and 6 to optimize your class features and get what ability score improvements you can to increase the number of spells you can prepare. Speaking of which, let's talk about spells, shall we? Since we're aiming for a net zero spell slots used in combat, we need to find a use for them elsewhere. All this cosmic power's gotta go somewhere, right? As such, there are two things to look for when choosing spells for this build. Non-combat utility, and the ability to heighten the spell slot used. Multi-class spellcasters may get all the spell slots of a single class mage, but they have to prepare their spells based on class level, not character level. This means you're gonna have a lot of higher level spell slots sitting there like naughty Snapchats from your girl trying to tease you at work, so any spell you can heighten is always a plus. Bahamut knows how long we'd be here if I went over every spell you could choose. But as much as I'd love to increase that watch time and make YouTube algorithm senpai notice me, my time is much better spent on more pressing tasks. Instead, here's a list of every Druid spell you can prepare, every Sorcerer spell you can learn, and every Wizard spell you have to both learn and prepare because the only things more fun than being able to bend the laws of physics to your whim are cost-benefit analyses and spreadsheets. Rituals are pretty nice as well. Especially for those going the Druid-Wizard route, since Wizards don't have to have the spell prepared to cast it as a ritual. Also, please take at least one offensive cantrip at level 1 so you're somewhat useful until you get your magic claws. It's hard enough to play a support caster in 5e with all that concentration bullshit, so make sure you have something to do during the early levels other than sit there with your dick in your hand waiting for someone to get hit so you can finally do something. Oh fuck, that reminds me. If you cast a spell that requires concentration before you wild shape, you can maintain concentration on it while in wild shape. So yeah, summon that healing spirit before you transform and you won't even need to use the spell slots to heal. God, this build just does everything in its power to not have to spend spell slots. I should have called this the spell slot Scrooge, am I right? You're right, too much alliteration. Anyway, let's move on to feats and magic items. Now, Wizards of the Coast would have you believe that these are optional rules, but honestly, if you're not using feats or magic items in D&D, then you're not playing D&D. Please report to the nearest Mutants and Masterminds video. For the rest of you, what, if any, feats you take are going to focus on giving you new toys to play with after you've wild shaped? Any feats that increase your combat effectiveness take priority, but see if you could squeeze in any feats that bump up your mental ability scores too. Elven accuracy is a must for those of you who picked half-elf, making the entire list of race options I listed before obsolete. Seriously, they're suboptimal, and then there's just plain stupid. And finally, we need to talk about the problem with magic items. See, there are 3 things you could do with your gear when you wild shape. Drop it, wear it, or shove it up your ass. You'd think wearing it would be the best option, but the gear doesn't change size when you do. Unless you want to spend the whole game explaining to the DM why your ring of protection would totally fit on a bear paw bigger than your mom's dick, just absorb it and move on. Problem is, none of your gear that gets absorbed works while it's inside you, meaning most magical items you could buy are worthless. However, that doesn't mean you have to sit on all your gold like the world's most expensive dildo. Scrolls, potions, and any items that benefit you outside of combat are what you'll need to invest in. Ion stones are just about the only items you can use in wild shape since they just float above your head, so make your skull into a model of the solar system if you can. And if you want to continue hoarding spell slots like an oligarch with an offshore bank account, just make as many spell scrolls as you can afford and keep those on hand. Now you're probably wondering why I haven't mentioned backgrounds or skill proficiencies, and no, it wasn't because I forgot about them until I was already halfway through the script and couldn't be bothered to add them in. Okay, that is what happened, but honestly, what background or skill proficiencies you choose really come down to what you and your party want. It wouldn't be much fun if I just gave you all the answers, now would it? Unless you're one of those people who looks up winning magic decks and copies them verbatim to own your friends at your local card shop, in which case I hope you get skull-fucked by an int. And yeah, I think that about wraps it up. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz YouTubers have to say to stay relevant, and we'll see you next time.